Welcome to Caring Community with your hosts Jay and Diane West. In this community, creative initiatives are welcomed. A culture of transformation is normal, and miracles are expected. Welcome to Caring Community.
Hello, I'm Jay.
And I'm Diane.
And this is
Caring Community.
And look what we have today. Beautiful brownies and bars. Oh, I just feel like I should take an adult, well, maybe not. But anyway, our guest, Shelli Muldoon, brought us brownies. So from now on, if you want to be a guest on our show, this is the way to get to the, this will get you here. So anybody want a brownie now? You want a brownie?
No, I'm
good,
thanks.
A latte would have been really nice with this too. I'm surprised you didn't think of that. So, but,
I was running out of time on my way.
Brownies, anybody? Brownies? Okay, they're right here. Make sure.
Thank you.
Thank
You're
you.
welcome.
And we shared some of them with the staff here, and but we kept the majority of them. Trust me. So anyway, can't wait to get into those. Shelli Muldoon, how long have we known you?
Oh, well, first of all, thank you so much for the invitation. I'm really honored to be here and excited always to share this story. So I was thinking about that, maybe 15-ish years, you think?
Yeah, I met Pastor Keith, who was your pastor, in 2001.
Okay.
And he and Dan was still there at the time. They had me in to teach in 2001 during the Sunday morning time. That was the very first time. And then he left, and Keith, it was like a year or two, and then he started having me in. And so at your church at the time, Beautiful Savior, and did lots and lots of seminars, healing services, conferences,
Wonderful.
all sorts of speaking, and we got acquainted with you and all the sisters that hang out with you, and now one of them's actually going to our church. So
I love it.
yeah. So we've known you for a really long time.
Yeah,
so.
I think initially, so if 2001 was the first time that you came, it may have been then because, once I attended the first time that you taught at Beautiful Savior, I was hooked, and so I think I hit all of them.
Yeah, He had me in for 3 Sunday mornings in a row, as I recall, during the Bible class, Sunday school hour. So yeah.
Okay.
So that was the first time. So yeah, it was a lot of fun and getting to know you over the years, and you've been in our house, and we've done stuff together, and practically went on trips together, and we should have or whatever. So
I know our sons have worshiped together, and Jason
our sons have done worship teams together.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Jason's always been a favorite. So.
So anything you want to share?
Oh gosh, it's just been it's been a good friendship. It's been an encouragement to me. Just your gentleness, I think, really speaks volumes.
Well, and even this fall, just there were a few things that, few health scares I had, and just coming to your congregation and the prayer that I received.
I forgot all about that.
Yeah.
I remember saying to you, well, this is easy for God to handle. Remember that?
You know what? I do remember that. That was one of the biggest things that helped me through that time, is putting things in perspective and thinking this is really nothing for God. And those words were so important, in fact, that and when I have friends that since then that I've talked, and they've come and brought things that are challenges in their life, that's the thing that comes up, because it's so true. So
that's what I have to remind myself of that all the time. This is nothing for God.
Yeah.
He's got me walking through, and I keep saying through.
Yes.
Because I'm going to get to the finish line.
Yeah, we go through stuff to get to something. We did a little video clip because we're doing 4 weeks of supernatural healing type stuff at our church, messages, and we did a little video clip yesterday. And we all did as a family, and he talked about how he had prayed for a young boy at your church a number of years ago who was battling allergy problems, and he prayed for him, and he was like 8 or 9 years old. And the parents came to Jason a year later and said he never had any allergies that whole season. But there's a double emphasis here. I had prophesied over that couple 8 or 9 years prior to that, saying, you're going to have a baby. And I even,
Over the
I walked
same.
by them in the building, and I said, it wasn't even part of the service, I just walked
Yeah.
by them and I said, you're gonna have a baby this year.
Yeah.
I remember Pastor Keith pulling me aside later and said, I hope you're right, because they've had several miscarriages. Okay, well, they had a baby, but then we never heard that they even had the baby.
Right.
It was 8 or 9 years later that we were at another service at your church. Jason prayed for the little boy to be delivered of allergies, and he was.
And
So-
that little
That
boy
was
was
the
the
same.
baby.
Yes, and that little boy was the
Yeah.
baby, yeah.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, so we didn't even know that. So it's interesting how God works and everything else. So.
It is.
So bringing things around. So we really are here, have you here, because you and your husband adopted, not a baby, but a young girl,
Almost a teenager.
almost a teenager from
Yeah.
Russia. Is that
That's
correct?
pretty
Yeah.
brave.
And,
So,
and
yeah.
how many years ago was that?
So you're going to ask me to do the math. It was
Well-
probably about 13 years ago. She had just, when she actually came to our house, she had just turned 12 years old. And when I met her, she was 11. So it was in 2005, just years after I had met you, actually, and you as well, Diane.
So what prompted you guys to do that as opposed to, well, first of all, what prompted you to adopt? And then second of all, what prompted you to adopt from Russia as opposed to any other country or even just America?
Yeah, those are all great questions. So, there are a lot of things that prompted me and my husband to adopt. I think that God had always, in my heart, softened my heart towards adoption. My father was adopted, and he was 16 years old before he realized that the house that he lived in, the parents that he knew as mom and dad, weren't his biological parents. And in fact, they weren't even legally his parents at that point. And he found out
wow.
because he went to get a driver's license, had to get his birth certificate, and on the birth certificate there was a different name.
Oh, wow.
And he couldn't even have the conversation that day. They came back and had to talk through it. And he wasn't even, so his name that he went by, Robert Carter, he wasn't even legally Carter at that point, and had to make some decisions as to what he wanted to do. And so ultimately did choose to become Robert Carter. But, as a young girl and, up to the time that we adopted Valia, I mean, that really softened my heart. That really gave me a perspective of what it was like, ached for his biological mother, who really was his aunt, and she could never talk to her son that she saw all the time as a son. And I saw the struggles that his parents had, and even the fact that he never knew his biological dad. I mean, there were so many parts of that adoption prism that I saw, and and it just really softened my heart. And so I think that God just used that in my life to prepare us for that. So it's not that we said we're going to adopt someday. It just all came to pass. And when I went to Russia, I went, we had actually just backing up a little bit before that, we had friends that gave us this picture of adoption, in our school system. And in fact, my daughter Molly had worked and tutored a girl that was an adoptee. And so Molly started praying, a few years before we adopted, she started praying that our family would adopt. So I feel like prayer is a big part of it. Molly kind of kicked it off in that way. And so when we went to Russia, I met Valia, and the Lord just started that process.
So
Wow.
naturally, how many children do you have?
2.
2, okay.
Yeah. So I have a son.
I knew of 2, but then I thought, well, maybe I'm missing one. So
I have a son who's Scott, and he's 30, and my daughter Molly now is 28, and Valia is 26.
So tell us a little bit, as I recall, way back, and I don't remember anything. We didn't, we don't pre-script questions.
No.
It seemed like there were some issues
Yeah.
getting to Russia, getting back.
Yeah.
It seems like there were some issues, but I don't recall what they were. Do you want to share some of that?
Yes, I would love to. We were totally, so my adoption, or my mission trip is where I met Valia, and that was in 2005. And, I went there in June and came back, and I was so excited about, the whole process. And, Mark had said, kind of flippantly, start the papers, and I don't think he really believed it was something that was going to happen yet at that time. And so I called an agency that was in California that we needed to work with. And when I talked to them, they had, I'm in this, writing this high, so excited. I just had such a strong connection with her, with Valia. And the woman on the phone started listing all of the reasons why this probably wouldn't work. One of the things was a lot of the children that were in the agencies would have families. They just couldn't afford them. And so they would just be sort of in the orphanage being provided for. So, that was a big thing, where a lot of the children really weren't adoptable, in that they may have had physical issues or emotional issues, and so they weren't allowed to be adopted out. Or the other thing is, Russia required 2 visits, and my husband and I at the time were sending 2 kids to parochial school, and it was a lot of money so just financially we thought, how can we do this? And I just got off the phone. I was just deflated, really, really upset. And I have a good friend that I talked to. She had also adopted, and she said, just come over and talk to me, come to my kitchen. And so this Angie prayed for me, and we talked through it. And one by one, things started, falling. We found out she didn't have any family.
Can you ask which Angie that is?
Yeah, so she is, I'm going blank on her last name right now.
She worked for Christchurch Cities?
No, she
Okay.
teacher
We have an Angie
at,
that's adopted.
Okay.
We have an Angie friend that's adopted several children, so we wondered.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that's
yeah,
okay.
Yeah, and yeah, she was a huge, huge blessing though to me. And one by one, those things started falling down, and we found out she didn't have family, which was good for us in the adoption, but also the other side of it is I would have loved her to had a connection, from home, but it made her, of course, adoptable. And she's wonderful. She's fine. She has, no physical issues. Had no physical issues that would have been an impediment. And then the other thing that was really a miracle is that we thought we would have to do at least 2 trips. And because I have a friend that took a picture of Valia and I while I was at the orphanage, so this is myself and this is Valia, they counted this as 1 trip. And so we only had to go back and have one more trip where we spent, about 2 weeks getting to know her, and my husband getting to know her too. And with that, the other miracle I just have to share, because I think it's equally cool. So there are 2 pictures that were taken that we submitted to the agency. And in this picture, this little boy ended up on the board at the agency because they had this picture with Valia. And there's another family that saw this picture, and they knew that
From the States?
From the States.
Okay.
So they had never met this little boy, and they ended up adopting him. They said,
Oh, wow.
and I always think this is so funny, they said, he looks just like one of our children. He looks just like us. And I've heard that from other adoptive families, and I've always thought it's so sweet because when I look at the pictures always, I don't see the resemblance,
Yeah.
but it's something
Yeah.
that God
Right.
knits.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's a very cool
Very
story.
cool.
Yeah. So you have that stuffed animal thing?
I do.
So show that. I don't want to miss that one.
Yeah.
Share this and share the
Yeah, so
reason you have that. And
this was really it was one of 2 possessions that Valia was able to take out of the orphanage. So everything that she left with us were all clothes that we brought. Any toys or anything, it was because we had brought it, and that's what we left with. Aside from this, her little backpack that she had got, so that was, it's great to have anything, for her. And then she had also a little album with a few photos of some of her friends that she was able to keep that too. But you know, so it's really something that we cherish. In fact, you know, even taking it out of the house to come here, you know, I feel like I have to gently lay it on the seat.
Yeah.
And
So what's it like for, has she ever shared, now that she's an adult or growing up,
Right.
what's it like for an 11, 12-year-old to, first of all, obviously she's an orphanage, but now she has to leave a country
That's
and
what
go
she knows.
fly. She's never been on a plane.
Yeah.
What is that like? You know, I mean, people, and then go through customs, then fly to a foreign country and trust that it's going to work out, that you're not going to be abusive, that you're not, is it going to work out? Are they going to love me? Are they going to care for me? Are they, after a year, are they going to just dump me? You know, whatever. What's it like for?
Yeah, I mean, there are so many answers to that question. You know, even when we were over there, it was so hard because, you know, she met us and instantly, it's for both Mark and I actually, when we met her, you know, it was amazing how God did something, you know, to our hearts that made us love her instantly. You know, and from her aspect, I think she also had, you know, a comfort level, which is, you know, really, I think, kind of difficult to understand because everything that we were asking her to do was huge, and she had to be ultimately the person standing in court, and they asked her, you know, do you want to go with this family? And it was all down to her saying da or yes, and she could have said niet at that point, and everything would have been off. And so, and, you know, she knew that she didn't have much of a future in that, you know, she was going to be 12. She was actually 12 years old in the courtroom at that day, I guess. But she was going to age out. So from that point, what would she do?
Right.
You know, she had that. But there's one friend that she has in the orphanage whose grandmother told her during this process, she said, don't go with them. The only reason why they would be interested in adopting, that foreign families would be interested in adopting, is that if something happened to one of their children, they would, you know, want to harvest one of your organs, which is a horrible thing.
Wow.
You know, just a horrible thing. And so there were a lot of inaccuracies, obviously, and lies that she was told. But despite all of that, she said yes. And also, you know, God had been working in our hearts, but he had been working in her heart too. I mean, when she was 5 years old is when she first went into an orphanage. And at that point, one day, she was sobbing, just crying to leave and go home with one of the workers. And so the worker took her home and, you know, had her baptized that night. And the next day she came back and, you know, she was peaceful and, you know, it didn't happen again. But throughout her life, you know, there were people that
So where was she the first 5 years?
She was with her biological mom.
Okay.
So she lived with her mom, and she lived with her grandma and her great grandma and grandfather for a while.
Is there any desire on either parts there to reconnect? Has there ever been communication?
They've all passed away.
Oh, okay.
So there's no one, yeah.
All right. Show the little card and talk about that with the stars.
Oh.
If you showed us.
Yeah, so we had been started, so it was June of 2005 is when I had actually met her, and it was about a 9-month process, about just the gestation of a pregnancy for us to actually get Valia.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this is something that, you know, we had been able to correspond with her, but we were told that we couldn't say anything about adoption or anything that would indicate that that process was going on, because clearly if it didn't work out, it would be devastating, you know, to her. And so we just had to be very careful. But we hadn't in all that time. I mean, I'd only had one meeting with her up to this point. And so I was in my office, and I had an email that came in from the adoption agency that said, hey, we've heard from Valia, you know, would you like to hear what she had to say? And so they sent me a transcription of what she said, but I didn't actually have this piece of paper. And so this was mailed a few days later, and we were beside ourselves, because this was the first, like, aside from that first meeting, I mean, this is a reflection of Valia's personality. If you know Valia, she has, she's just very outgoing and creative.
Yeah.
She loves design, she loves dance, she's just, and so this was like one of the first pieces of like, oh, this is who this daughter is, in a much, you know, deeper way than we had been able to see before. And you're probably wondering, what does this say? And you're going to be surprised, I'm sure, to know that I can't read it verbatim in Russian, but it
Come
basically...
on, I can't believe this. 15 years and you
I
can't.
know. I could say da and yet, and I thought I was doing good. So
Yeah.
I've been
ultimately,
saying yet for a long time. She's saying da da. You know,
what she basically though said is that she, you know, enjoyed meeting me, and that she hoped that I would come again to visit her, and you know, talked about the Russian winter and how cold it was, and just some of that kind of stuff. So, yeah, really a special
sweet.
special
But
thing.
what you can interpret is your book. Why don't you show that? We have about 5
Yeah,
minutes left.
right.
So share your book and tell us about what this is about.
Yeah, so the book is Volga's Daughters, and so the title is, so there are two people, again, that really, when I think of Volga's Daughters, that I think of. So Valia, of course, and she's on the back cover. There's a photograph, and her really bright blue eyes are shining through. And then the front is my biological grandmother, Esther. And so she also, her parents, my great-grandparents were from Russia. So they were
wow.
German
Really?
immigrants
Wow.
that went to Russia, then came to the
All right,
United
now
States.
we're connecting the dots, okay? So
Yeah, yeah.
I didn't
pretty soon you'll be,
realize
I'm surprised Valia's not, you know, playing tennis with professional tennis as a
Yeah,
Russian.
well, she probably would have been a dancer,
Okay.
professional dancer, not tennis player, but
ballet.
yeah. Esther's parents, my great-grandparents, were born on either side of the Volga River, so
Wow.
interesting.
So this is the whole story in the book, and they can get it from you. We'll run your email address on the
Perfect.
screen, so you can get the book from her, and you can. We can't really share the price or anything, but you can just share that with them if somebody responds. So
That'd be perfect.
if you're interested in adoption or how a story goes, especially from a foreign country,
Yeah.
you know, Shelli and Mark, they can tell you. They've been through it all. Did Valia? Did she become a U.S. citizen?
Yeah, so she actually has dual citizenship.
Dual citizen.
So the moment that we touched ground in the United States, she had
So the
US
perfect job for her would be to be an astronaut and go to the space station.
It would be. It would be. It would be an interpreter, or she's
Well,
got a lot of
both sides up
options.
there working
Yeah.
together. She could just be a press secretary or something. You know,
Yeah,
so.
yeah.
Well, this is an amazing story.
What
I
a
learned so
nice
much more
story.
now than I ever. We've known you all this time. We just got bits and pieces. That's
Yeah.
probably our fault for not jumping in and saying.
No.
If I'd known I was going to get a tray of brownies for hearing the story, I'd asked you a lot sooner. So.
Yeah.
So, what do you want to? About 3 minutes left.
Okay.
Do you want to share anything with the audience? Look at the camera. Talk to people who are thinking about adoption. Anything you want to say?
Yeah, I guess I would just say one of the questions that you had asked that I hadn't answered is why Russia? Why not the United States?
Right.
And I would just say that, you know, the child that God put in front of us was in Russia. So if it had been the United States, it would have, you know, if she would have been in the United States, that's where, you know, we would have adopted from. And, you know, I think that God has different things for all of us. And if adoption or fostering is on your heart, you know, I would just encourage you to look into it. And God tells us to act, and she has blessed our lives, enriched our lives so greatly. And I think one of, maybe this is a great thing to kind of tie off on, one of the great things that, you know, we heard, just that I heard a few weeks ago, is we have 2 other children, and both of them in the last, you know, month or so have said, someday I could see, you know, adopting too. And to this mother's heart, that was like huge, because it meant that the blessing had gone all the way around. So
Right. We have a lady in our church, and I think she had at least five foster children. You know, and that's a different
different thing.
thing
That
altogether.
to
But
me would be harder.
pardon? Oh yeah, I
That
think that
would,
would be
you
much
know,
harder.
knowing that they
Yeah.
could be gone, and
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
would you even have relationship with them
Yeah,
ever
right.
again? And yeah,
Right, especially children that have come from hard places that
yeah,
have seen it, abandonment anyway. So,
Right.
This is a separate question. I've never asked this. What nationality is Muldoon?
Irish.
That's what I thought.
Irish,
I was thinking
but-
about it at home this morning, so it's got to be Irish. Maybe Shelli will do a
So,
little dance for us.
At
Little,
her confirmation, it was so cute because the pastor, you know, said her middle name is Alexis, so it's this Russian, you know, Valentina Alexis Muldoon. So we always kind of got a kick out of that. But I will say this: I married into the Muldoon, so you know, my heritage is German. So just saying.
okay. Alexis, huh? Wow. That sounds like one of those little boxes you talk to
Yeah.
or something.
Yeah. Well, right.
Well, Shelli, thanks for coming on our show. You know,
Yeah.
Caring Community is about people who are caring, providing care in varieties of ways. And this is a very unique one that we've not talked about, and we'll have others too on our shows coming up. But it's just amazing to think about that you've changed the life of one person
yeah,
and made it so much better. You know, had she stayed in the orphanage and whatever, God only knows what would have happened, but you know, in a foreign country and everything else. But to have parents loving her, caring for her from age 11, half, 12, still with them now, and the blessing that she has and the amazing miracles that have happened along the way, incredible stuff. So thanks for tuning in to Caring Community. We love you, we care for you. Hope you'll watch the next show, and God bless you, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
bye.